We are going to do some Glacier watercolor painting today. So you are going to use a pencil to draw your glacier. You are going to have watercolor paints available, and it comes with a brush. You've got paper, I think some copier paper maybe to practice on, and then some cardstock to do your postcard. And you also are going to need something with water. So that can be a cup, whatever you have available to be able to get some water onto your paper. If you have a spray bottle, you can use that too, but really just any kind of water and a brush is going to get us going. So first, let's draw our glacier. We're going to start on the left-hand side of your paper. We will start about, I don't know, 2 fingers down, start here. And every line is going to have just a little jaggedy edge to it. So you can see I'm drawing sort of jagged line all the way down to about the same distance, a few fingers up. I'm going to end it right there. And then I'll go back over again. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to this time start in a different direction so I can see what I did, and then go down a little jaggedy. Maybe this time I'm going to bring it over a little bit differently and end it about the same, not quite exact. Go back up again, and this time I'm going to do sort of an inverted V. So I go up and then down, and this time maybe bring it over a little bit to the right. And then one last one, and bring it down. On that last one, I started a little bit further down on the edge. I'm going to have a gap here. So I'm going to just go over a little bit, and I'll mark my paper so that I know that's where I'm going to get that line to come to. And then I'll have another line coming down from the other direction to that point. Okay. Now I'm going to make this a little more jagged. I don't want it to always go up. So I'm going to go down first. And then maybe I'll still bring this back up and bring my point down again, a little bit in line with the first point. I'm going to go back over here again. And this time my line, I'm going to have a little crevice that I'm going to put in the middle of that. Okay. And then go back up here, draw down to this point. And then the last part, we're going to just take to the edge of the page. Now we have to connect those on the bottom. So we're going to start over here and again, never a straight line. That's going to look too obvious. We want this to look like jagged ice chunks. Okay, so we get to that point. Now remember, we're keeping a gap here because that glacier ice is going to be flowing through. So we want to make sure that we remember that that's there. And that's why I practice. I would definitely use a piece of paper to get the gist of this first before you go to your final product. Always good to do a first draft. Now I'm going to have up here, 2 fingers up or whatever, we're going to put a line that goes pretty close to across the edge, still with a little jaggedness, and then some mountainous upper part of that landmass, okay, or ice mass. In here, we know that a piece of ice came out, so we're going to do a little jagged shape that comes just out from there. And then we'll have 2 that have already floated out into the ocean water. And you can do whatever shape you want, but we have 2 there, okay? And that is the gist of the drawing. Now we're going to move on to the paints. Your watercolor paint needs water, obviously. So you want to make sure that that bucket of water is close by and that you get some water on that paint. I actually use a spray bottle just to kind of get it going. But you don't have to do that. You can just use your brush and get those paints good and wet before you begin, and always go back and dip your brush into your water so that you're not working with dry. Your paint will last longer, go spread farther if that's the case. I'm going to use this blue over here because it has a little bit more color, and I would say the bluest part of this painting for me is going to be my sky. So I'm going to get that on here. I think this last color over here has a little bit of a deeper blue in it also. So I'm going to do that as well and get that onto the page. And the more water I can use, the more this is not going to dry with a lot of hard edges. We want soft edges in this watercolor. So you can see you're getting that sky as fast as you can with still being somewhat accurate so that you don't end up with any harsh edges. I always go left to right. I try not to go up and down because then it doesn't look as much like a sky. But if you need to go up and down to get in between some of those areas, as long as you don't leave any lines in your painting, you'll be fine. Okay. So we are getting that going. I can even use a little bit of the purple. Kind of adds a nice color to the sky as long as I'm mixing. And that's one of the things about watercolor that I think is so much fun, is that you can take colors and put them together on your palette, which is really just the inside. I don't know if you can see that here, but I'm just using the inside of my paint container, but you can also use a paper plate and mix your colors on that, and works great. And we want to try to catch as many of those edges while they're still wet so that they don't have too harsh a line in the middle of our sky. That's where the practice comes in. Now, one thing about watercolor that is pretty easy is you can usually just wipe it off with your finger if you have a little spill or a line you didn't mean to make, and it comes right off. So I'll go with my darkest blue now, which seems to be this one on the end. And the more pigment I use, the more paint I use without the water, a lot of water, the darker that line is going to hold. And so I'm going to do that for the ones that are in between, because I think that will add a little dramatic flair to this. I actually found this video online from an art teacher who was doing glaciers, and I think this is a great way to get started on this. So we're going to just get those lines in here. Now, obviously, if we use a lot of water, it's going to run. So we don't want to do too much of that. And we don't have to do every line. But you can see I had so much water on this paintbrush that I couldn't see the line of paint. And so then I just need to get a little bit of that wiped off, and then I can see it. It'd be great to outline. Maybe I'll even use the purple to outline those pieces of chunks of ice that flowed in, just to make them a little more obvious. If you use other colors, that's absolutely fine. This is your piece of art, so do what you think is best. I'm using blue because typically all the water and the ice and any of the color that you see is a reflection of the sky, and the sky on this particular day is very clear, so blue would be the color that you would see the most. but I'm sure you've gone to the water and seen it be pretty dark and dreary, and that's typically because the sky is about that same, and so that's what's reflecting into it. Okay, so I think we've got our lines down there pretty good now. One of the things that I think you can do is put some lines that are straight and going up from the ice. It sort of indicates, I think, like a coldness. I use my finger to bring those up. You don't want those lines to be thick. So that means that you, again, are going to use a little less water in those so that they hold their line. And then I'm going to go up this way. I can do the same thing off this landmass here. And it just sort of indicates that there's really cold temps there. So these, I might even put some lines in this just to get some color onto the pieces of ice, and it's all water, so there's probably different crevices and whatnot in that ice anyway. So we're just kind of indicating that this way. And if you want to use a pink or purple, you can merge your colors. You've got plenty of colors to choose from. You would do that on your paper plate. Take a couple of the different colors with some water, mix it up, get a good color going that you feel would represent this the best way you want to. I am going to probably have just a little bit of color in that piece in the back, but now I want to get that water. For me, those ice chunks are going to look best if there's some blue in that water. So there's a lighter color blue here, and I kind of like the idea of just getting a different color into that water. So that's what I'm doing. And I don't know that I'm going to make it as solid as my sky. I think the plan will be to have a little bit of that white show through. I don't know if you could just hear our pup back there. I don't know what he wants. And there we go. We're just getting that. You can see I'm in some spaces, I'm putting a lot of color, maybe up near the edges. I'm going to put a little bit more color so that there's a good separation there. And then as it comes out away from the ice chunks, I might let a little bit more show through. Now, one of the things I think you would anticipate if you were up wherever this is in the freezing cold. I'm in Vermont, which is really cold too, but this is unusually so. I think what you would want is some sort of way to show that there are some ice chunks in that water. So we'll let that dry just a little bit because we want the chunks, the ice lines, not to merge too much. So I'm going to give it a second, but this dries pretty quick on paper and dries pretty quick with this type of watercolor. So I'm going to put some lines in there just to indicate that that there's ice chunks in that water. And I'm going to do that without using too much water so that those lines stay. And those will just be some jagged lines that I'm putting in that just indicate, oh, look at this. There's some chunky ice in that water, which makes perfect sense, right? There we go. There we go. And that way, it makes sense that we are in there. Now, you could see that that line is really, really thick. compared to all my other ones. So I'm taking a piece of paper towel and I'm going to just blot that out a little bit because that was way too much for my taste. I may even wet that a little bit and just try to get a little bit of that purple paint off just because. If it stays on there, it's not the end of the world. It's very watery looking and we're looking at water, so not too bad, but I just didn't want that to be a big focal point. Okay. When that dries, I may put a little bit more blue on there, and basically that's it. Those are your glaciers. I can't wait to see how yours turn out. Have a great day.